And good evening to everyone who's already here, everyone listening and tuning on YouTube, watching it live or watching it after, or alternatively, if you're listening to it on the podcast as well. Welcome, and I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. It is actually, would you believe, episode 38, a 38 game season, and we're joined tonight by my co-host Manny Kang. Hi, Manny.
Hi, how is everybody out there? Lots to talk about. Hey, Dave.
Loads to talk about. Amy Hadley.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all.
And, of course, our special guest and friend of the show, respected Wolves journalist. Lots of knowledge about Wolves. There's lots of interesting reports and breaking news. Mr. Tim Nash. How are you, Tim?
Very well, thanks, Dave. Delighted to be on the show again. Thanks for inviting me. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome. And first other thing as well, we do need to wish you a very big happy 50th birthday for yesterday. I believe you've got a special gift.
Yes. Happy birthday, Tim.
Indeed, yeah. I thought I'd bring it along. Not normally one to show my allegiances, but I think people probably know by now I'm a Wolves fan, and this was brought by my work colleague. So it's a bit of a giveaway of how old I am as well. If I see that.
Yeah, if you're listening on the podcast,
bit of a milestone. So there we go.
Tim is holding up a Wolves shirt with the number 50 on the back and Nash in writing on the back. Absolutely fantastic. I hope you had a lovely day. We're just getting some comments already coming through. Robert Fletcher, evening, Dave, Manny, Amy, and welcome to Tim. Bob says happy birthday to you as well, Tim.
Thank you very much.
So it's going to be an interesting one tonight because we're going to do a little bit of a look back and a season review, which we have to do as it's the end of the season. But also we've got lots to talk about because, Wolves have announced the new shirt deal. With Castora, we've had the Ask Wolves and Ask Jeff with all the senior management. Obviously, there's lots of speculation and uncertainty at the moment with, obviously, Nuno now departing and being linked, would you believe, with the likes of Crystal Palace and Everton. And, of course, we've got the new manager stroke head coach yet to be announced. The hot favourite, of course, is Bruno Lage. Another Portuguese manager, been waiting for his work permit. We think that's been announced, and we'll get on to that. And, of course, we need to talk also about the potential outgoings. There's lots of speculation surrounding the likes of Adama Traore, Neves, Rui Patricio, Moutinho, and the likes going out. But also be interesting to see, as well as we get to that, if Tim has any insight on potential signings coming in. So listen, let's start off, and we'll go with you first, Tim, just to get your quick thoughts on obviously Nuno leaving and how you got to hear first, and what your thoughts on that.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I was very sad to see him go, and that it was it hit me like the bombshell, like it did everybody else. It was a shock. There was no inkling whatsoever in the lead up to it. He'd held his press conference, but unlike Nuno, he'd had it half an hour earlier. He's been like clockwork for virtually the whole of the 4 years that he's been there. Always 1 o'clock on a Friday, and this one was half past 12. I still don't know whether that was coincidence, or not, because pretty soon after he'd finished his press conference, by about 1:05, wind forward about, get my maths right, about 50 minutes. So by about 10 to 2, we'd had the bombshell from the club, the announcement that he was leaving, and no reasons given, at that point. But after a lot of phone calls, I managed to find out that indeed he was sacked, and I know fans probably were just as much disbelief as I was, really. But especially when you consider that he'd been sacked 5 days before, so before the Everton game. I think that was the biggest news to come out of the initial announcement. And for Wolves to have done that to a manager who has an even better win record than Stan Cullis, I think says a lot for how ruthless Fosun can be when they want to be. It doesn't appear that he's the huge previous success that he brought to the club has perhaps been, I don't know, you'd say honoured perhaps by the decision that they made. That it does appear to be a bit premature.
Well, he only signed a new contract back in September, didn't he? As well.
Correct. Yeah, he did. And he has always talked about the future and that it was a long-term project. And I think, I know that he had plans to bring in players this summer. He was talking about targets, and even on the day of his departure, he, in fact, the key line to have come out of his press conference, his pre-match press conference, was, in fact, that talks were very much ongoing with Adama Traore again to restart those discussions, and hopefully with a view to seeing him extend his stay at Wolves. So it was a big shock, and I'd like to kind of formally place on record my appreciation for him. The football that and the success he brought was unparalleled in my 40 odd years of watching Wolves. So got huge respect for him as a coach and the way he improved players, his choice of players, the signings he made, and Wolves is certainly are certainly better off for the last 4 years that he's he's given the club, and maybe more might come out in the fullness of time, but certainly, to think that he was dismissed, I think certainly shows.
Tim, was he definitely sacked then? In your opinion, he was definitely sacked. He didn't walk away after. There's been lots of speculation amongst fans, prominent fans as well, who think that there was some sort of falling out in January over signings, maybe, and the relationship grew apart. Was it based purely on results, or was there something deeper? Or,
well, he was certainly sacked. That's my. That's I'm unequivocal about that from top sources. So that's he wouldn't have chosen to leave. I'm convinced of that. He wanted to stay as Wolves manager. So the decision was taken by the club or by Fosun, and whether what I'm not 100% about is whether there was any falling out as to transfer budget. Clearly the squad needs work. It had stalled this season. I think obviously there's been so much said about the loss of Raul Jimenez, but and also the injuries to Pedro Neto and stuff as well. But I think it was clear that investment needs to be made in the squad, and what I don't know is just how forthcoming that investment was going to be this summer. Fosun have always supported the managers. I've seen some quite frankly ridiculous comments from some fans doubting Fosun's commitment, and but if you look, what they've done is time and time again, I think it's 7 or is it 8 times now, they've smashed the club's transfer record. That they've invested more in Wolves than any other owner has. They've just smashed it out of the park. So I don't see how their financial commitment could be questioned at all.
And you know what, Tim? Although it's come as a shock, because I think whether you were people, obviously there was a certain section of the vocal fan base that wanted Nuno out, or whether you believe that he should have been given the time, it's happened, hasn't it? And one thing you can say about Fosun, since they've come in, they have done exactly what they said they're going to do. They've got this plan. They've invested, like you say, in the team, not just in the team, but in the infrastructure. around Molineux and the ground and the training facilities and all that. And each year, you know, they're trying to push us on. So you have to sort of like take it and go, that's done. I've gone through the sort of like the grief phase to the angry phase to the acceptance phase of it now. And you have to go, okay, well, they must have a plan. Let's hope that it works out going forward. And you've got to stick behind the owners. You can't. I do worry that if it does start bad the start of next season, you know what, how things can get out of hand very, very quickly. It'll come back and bite them, as someone said earlier. But you've got to trust in the process now. They've made the decision, haven't you?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is now a time of you know, the pressure is on Jeff Shee and is on Fosun. You know, the spotlight turns very sharply onto them, or you know, has done ever since you know, their decision to remove Nuno. So you know, if everybody you know is seeing what the next move is going to be, it does appear as if Bruno Lage, I think that's correct in my pronunciation there, will be installed as Wolves' next manager, as Nuno's successor. He has been granted a work permit. So and I don't profess to know too much about him, but like everybody else, I've looked and it doesn't surprise me the direction that they've gone in at all. You know, I'm talking as if he has been appointed now, but let's assume it is going to be, because there doesn't appear to be anybody else in the frame, and I do think it is going to be. It does appear to be that it is going to be Bruno. It's certainly one that the fans don't have to adjust the Nuno songs too much.
That's
Someone did say that to me, actually. He's straight swore.
On the lyrics for those songs.
We'll come on to talk a bit more about Bruno Lage, or however we pronounce it. I'm sure that he'll put it right when he eventually turns up, because we do want to spend some time looking at what's going to happen next. But Amy, let me come to you next. Obviously, Nuno's gone. The season has just gone. I mean, do you want to give us your sort of highlights from the season and also your best memories of Nuno from your perspective and the Nuno era?
Absolutely. I mean, highlights of the season for me is that it's over. To be straight to the point, I don't think it's a season that we'd probably, for use of a best phrase, like to forget. But I don't necessarily think it's as big as a disaster as everyone makes out it to be. I think when we've spoken about these extra time shows, I think given the hand that they've been dealt with the injuries and obviously the repercussions of such a long season previously, really kind of bit them where it hurt. So I don't think a 13th place finish, considering all that, comfortably safe, was necessarily a bad season. I think fans obviously expected a lot more. I think that's where the frustrations from some of the people that were claiming Nuno out comes from. But for me, even though I was glad to see it be over, it wasn't necessarily as bad as everyone says it was, which is a bit of a contradictory statement. However, I just think that it was just quite a hard watch. The style of play didn't seem as to where it was last season, the lack of goals, and it was just quite difficult to watch as a fans. I think for me, the highlights, there was some really good moments, wasn't there? I think the win at home against Chelsea was really good. I think that was a turning point, and also the Arsenal game at home when they went on a really considerable run following a really disappointing, really hard to watch January, was good to see. And I think this saw some fighting spirit and probably saw quite a good team spirit, more so than even when they were winning, is the fact that, you know, it was backs up against the wall. So I think it was really nice to see. And I think the leadership skills, especially of Conor Cody and I think Neves as well, really came out. Hello, Blossom. God, she's here. What were your favourite parts? My my least favourite moment was losing against the Albion at home. I think I'd waited for that game for a long time, and I think I put too much emotion into it, and I was actually really upset when they lost against the Albion. It's hard to, looking back now, it seems quite ridiculous, but I think it was a time when we went into lockdown for the however many time it was, the third time. and then 10 days later thinking this could be something that could give you quite a lot of joy. And then to lose in that way, the players didn't look like they could be bothered at all. And I think that was a really hard watch. It was really, really hard. And then after that moment, I was just like, let's just get this season done. I've always been a very big Nuno supporter. I think everyone that watches this channel knows that. And I do think it's a mistake. I really do. And I just hope that I'm proven wrong, because, you know, these talks of him joining Everton, Palace, and I say, you know, fair play. He didn't want to leave Wolves. Some people are saying he can't go to Liverpool. And I'm like, well, if you were pushed and you want to carry on working in the Premier League, then go on. You know, you've got my blood blessing. I'll be there clapping him if he does come back next year as a manager in a different club, because he's not done a lot for Wolves, but he's done a lot for the city as well. And I think Wolverhampton in itself is definitely a better place for him, being around for 4 years. So I think, you know, like, if he watches this, like to say thank you. I don't think he will, but, you know, there we go. So on to my
Jeff Shee will watch it.
You'd be surprised, Amy, who watches the channel. I've heard in the last couple of
Jeff
days.
will watch it. Yeah, Jeff will watch it.
So I think on something a bit more positive. My favourite Nuno moment. Oh God, I don't even know. Where do we even start? What a glorious 4 years it was. I think there's probably two. I think in the Championship, the game against Bristol, when he got banished up into the exec box, and then they scored the winner, and just you saw you thought, yes, like, he wants this as much as the fans do. And I think to see that passion from a manager, like, he just seemed like it meant as much to him as it did to us. And I think that's something really special and really something unique. Like, he was just human, wasn't he? And I think, you know, there's a lot about emotional leaders and how to use emotion in a good way to leaders. And I think he just epitomises that for me, is that he just understood everything that he was doing. So I think that was the first one. And then the second one for me was just the FA Cup, getting to the FA Cup semi-final, up until the 93.5 minutes, was just unbelievable. Like, that day, me and my dad, when Wembley got redone, when they knocked it down and built it again, we said that we weren't going to attend an event, an England game or anything at Wembley until Wolves got there. So the fact that he got us there and we got to go together, and with my sister as well, was just like a dream come true almost. It was just a shame that happened, but up until the 93rd minute was just the best day.
Absolutely. Well, I think you've summed it up really well there, Amy. A lot of the things that you said. Manny, I'm sure you've got a really interesting take on all of that from your perspective.
You know what? I'm just going to... Tim and Amy have just talked about Nuno's glory, and there was a lot of glory there. And you know, I said to somebody, even if he didn't manage the football club, I would have kept him in Wolverhampton and gave him the mayor of the town or something, because he's just an excellent human being.
He's got something from the uni.
He's got a doctorate as an honorary degree or something. But the thing is, he was an exceptional human being. His words were quite far-reaching to people who even didn't follow football. So we're going to miss that. But I'm going to have the alternative view of what Tim said. And it is a ruthless business, football. Nuno's been there 4 years. 4 years for a manager these days. I think Watford have had 7 managers in 4 years. You know?
Weird. How many was it in one season? Was it 3 or 4? Or?
when I look at it, facts and figures, yes, we had the big injury of Raul. Did we really replace him? Before the season started, we knew we needed that second striker. No, we really didn't. We had a young guy who was thrust into the limelight ahead of his time. We scored 35 goals in the season. Only 3 clubs scored less. We didn't score in 29 of 38 first half games. They're quite shocking statistics if you look at the alternative view of where the season went. So if you put them down on table, you know, our top scorer scored 5. Was the last time, was the 40s or the 50s? We had a top scorer of 5. So these are pretty damning statistics if you're looking at the graphs and the charts of how we did this season. And so in a boardroom, it's quite easy to point out some of the failures, and we need to play more attacking football You win matches by scoring goals. Wolves didn't score goals. Defensively, a lot of fans keep going on about defence and we need to improve defence. Our defence wasn't in the bottom 3 or bottom 4. It was because we don't score. If you concede, it means you lose. So if you've scored a couple of goals, even if you have made the shocking mistake, you generally probably draw or win a match. So looking at it from that perspective, I think that's probably the reason why the change was made, that we just didn't look like scoring goals in many matches. Not just down to Raul, but Nuno was a legend, and I would have given him the summer to put things right and absolutely tried to give him the opportunity. He earned that. You know, he didn't really have the pre-season last year, but they've made the decision. So now they've made the decision. We've got to move on, and we've got to give our full backing to Fosun because they haven't done anything too wrong so far. But now this is their big test. This is the first little bit of a rocky road for them in a way. You know, at the start they made a couple of shockers, but they were finding their feet, so we forgive them. So you know, Nuno's highlights, lots of them. Amy's named some of the really good ones, but the European away days, he took us to Europe. Nuno did, you know. So I'll never forget Barcelona, Istanbul, going to places like this seems like a world away right now. And I hope, he will get a good reception if he did come back as a manager for another club, and he deserves that for where he put us. But we've got to move on. We've got to move on, and we've got to score goals. I said that, I think, end of last season, didn't I, Dave? We don't score enough, and we scored 50-something last year. And this year we went to 35 from 50-something. That's not all down to Raul. So that's where I think the ruthlessness comes from.
And we only scored 8 goals in the first half, didn't we? Some good points there. I'll give you mine in a minute. I'll be quite sure. But Tim, you got to know Nuno probably better than any of us, because obviously you go to the press conferences and you probably see all the different sides. Sometimes I think he could be quite to the point, and other times he could be quite laid back and jovial, you know, and the way he dealt with. So it'd be quite interesting to see what your highlights of the Nuno era and what your take is of the whole season.
I laughed to myself because it probably wouldn't be many of his press conferences in terms of highlights after all. He's a bit of a slow burner, Nuno was, and I have to say, if you spoke to anyone in the media, he could be a difficult, prickly character through certainly in his first, in the Championship era, where he was dismissive to the point of being rude to certain journalists, which I felt was unfair. Thankfully, I didn't. I think I've got away lightly with that.
Which certain journalists would they be?
Well, I mean, at the time, there was quite in the Championship era. There was only probably Tim Spears and Mike Taylor, but I remember he was not just dismissive. He was almost contemptuous of Mike and Mike Taylor from BBC Radio WM. If anyone knows him, he's the most kindest, courteous, friendliest guy that you could wish to know, and it was uncalled for, really. There was no reason why Nuno needed to be like that. And I think as time went on, I think there was a theory that we felt because he'd managed in bigger clubs at the time, or to he was used to speaking in front of more journalists, that he felt he wanted to play to the galleries a bit. He wanted a bigger audience, which just wasn't there media wise in the Championship. He did get that in the Premier League, and at the time I remember some of the national reporters talking about when he'd done press conferences when, for example, Porto or Valencia played Leicester, and how brilliant he was, talking for 45 minutes. And we used to think at the time, well, when are we going to see this side of Nuno? But gradually, I would have to say, he got better. And when you consider, it's easy maybe for us to be a bit dismissive of people who, we don't know. We haven't walked a mile in their shoes, and let's not forget, Nuno was speaking English as a second or third language. I saw him flick from Portuguese to English to Spanish, speaking to European journalists at the click of a finger. And let's not underestimate. He's a deeply intelligent man, and who was ultimately showed a hugely compassionate side to him. And for all the horrible kind of things that COVID has brought, I'd have to say it brought out arguably the best, or certainly the most compassionate, in Nuno Espirito Santo. Nuno to the media became a different person through COVID. I think he was, and I was told he was genuinely scared by COVID, getting deliveries to his door. The Compton became a complete no-go zone. Let's not forget he set up, didn't want the players going shopping for food, or their families, arranged for staff to go shopping for them. He was, and obviously it didn't prevent certain players getting COVID, but as a character, but I think it changed him. I don't think it had any impact on him in terms of losing his job, but it changed his personality. He became he just showed more of himself, and I think he wanted that kind of two-way. Maybe he was lonely, from just, four walls, speaking to his staff and not having that human interaction. But he became better for us as media, became easier to deal with. He certainly, I keep coming back to the word, but he became much more compassionate than he'd ever been before. He just got time for people, and I'll never forget the gesture he made. Paying £250,000 to the needy people of Wolverhampton out of his own pocket. I don't know. I admire plenty of Wolves managers, but I don't know. And of course, obviously he's a very wealthy man, and he's very well paid for what he did, but it still takes a lot to have done what he did, and he was saying he wished he could have done more, and also little quotes like he said about Black Lives Matter. He said he wouldn't care if he was, let's not forget he was the only manager of ethnic minorities in the Premier League, and he said if he was the last person, not just manager, he was the last man to still take a knee, he'd be there on his own doing it.
Yeah.
So we saw a lot of evidence where I think he just showed himself to think beyond the surface, really. I think he was an intensely kind of deep thinker. I think he showed he cared about it. It's an easy thing to say. It's not such an easy thing to do, to really genuinely care about so many people. And I think he actually showed that from 4 years before, when he might not have always looked as if he was the most compassionate person in the world. But certainly by the end of his time at Wolves, I think there was a real compassion and warmth about him that should never be forgotten, in my opinion.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, and I think you saw a lot more, like you say, a lot more of the man and the person. And interesting, you say about how scared he might have been, and obviously detracted from it, away from his family for long periods. That's got to have a psychological effect on anybody, and that must have had an impact, aside from the injuries, on his role and in his job. For me, a bit like all of us, I was sad, shocked when he went. I've accepted it now, and I'm looking forward. And obviously, the new guy who'll come in will get, every supporter should get behind him. But my memories, highlights for me, aside from the ones that Amy's mentioned, with the thing running on the pitch at Cardiff, the 2 penalties, with Neil Warnock running, not shaking his hand and stuff like that. You'll never forget the outpouring of emotion and joy, and how much he was invested in the team. But coming back to the semi-final, it was great and he enjoyed that. But the match that always sticks in my memory for the occasion, Saturday night, it was live on BBC One. You know, the whole nation was watching. You know, we had gold flags that were going on in the stadium. That quarter-final against Manchester United, one of the best atmospheres.
Yeah, it was electric.
Yeah, that was unreal.
To a person, every man, boy, girl, child, whatever your generation, we were all united that night as one pack. And the whole stadium, with the team, with the board, it was just like that was where it all really clicked for me on that night of what we'd become. And you can never take that away. And the coming out the stadium and knowing we're going to Wembley, my dad's lifelong dream is to go to an FA Cup final and sing Abide With Me, and he's 83, and we did come within like 20 seconds of it happening. But to go on the day, then to go to Wembley, and then, like you say, the European trips, going to Istanbul. I've spent 5 days there. You know, would never have gone to a place like that if it wasn't for going and watching the Wolves and following, and the whole build up and the atmosphere around it and the night, and then obviously the winner. It was just fantastic, and we got Nuno to thank for all of that. It hasn't worked out this year for whatever reason. You know, I think we'll all agree, and the majority of people will agree that, you know, the injuries, the pandemic, you know, not being away from the families and not being able to have a consistent team. But you can say he did stick by that small squad. And we did say on this channel many, many, many times that if Raul ever got injured, if we ever got any injuries, we'd be in trouble. And he did kind of admit to that towards the end, that he wanted a bigger squad. But of course, we'll never know now what lessons he would have learned from this year. But I think the big thing that he said as well, when he came here, he didn't really know a lot about Wolverhampton, and you don't know who or what you fall in love with. And he fell in love with the people, with the city, and it meant that much to him. Like you said, Tim, he gave that donation of 250,000 to the Feed Our Pack campaign, and we will, like what Amy says, when he comes back to the stadium, whether he comes with a foreign team, whether he comes with Crystal Palace or Everton, I tell you what, every single person in that stand will give him a rapturous welcome, and they will sing Nuno is a dream again for him, because that will be the breadth of the man and the gratitude. So those are my memories, and we have to park it now. It's gone, and say thank you. Tim, in terms of like performances this season from players or disappointments, we've had quite a few people that have obviously come into the squad this year. Who's impressed you this season that you might not have thought, or, you know, in your particular player season? I think most people see that Pedro Neto's a breakthrough season. He's obviously got injured, but what have you seen that's really impressed you from the players?
I think Neto. I agree with him being player of the season. I think he's been the standout performer. It's such a shame that he got injured. I do think he's, you know, people forget, because I've read a lot of fans' comments, you know, kind of bemoaning the loss of Diogo Jota, but people forget that for the second half of last season, Jota was whether Liverpool had got in his ears, you know, his ear by then. Maybe they had, and Jota, for me, you know, had become a bit inconsistent. But Neto was keeping Jota out of the team, you know, for the second, for quite a few games in the second half of last season, because he was that good. And I think Neto has really kicked on this season. Could have done with a few more goals, like a lot of players could. But, you know, 5 goals, 5 assists in the first full season is not bad going, considering somebody who's on I think just turned 21. I'm sure, you know, a lot of clubs will be looking at him. But for me, you know, he's somebody who could become a very exciting player with Wolves. You know, this is somebody when he signed for Wolves, let's not forget, he said he wants to become the best player in the world, and you know, so he's clearly, you know, the sky's the limit in terms of this lad's ambition. So I think there's exciting times ahead for him. We didn't see much of Vitinha until kind of the back end of the season, but I was very impressed with Vitinha. I think he's if it was up to me, I'd probably sign him. He's there available for 20 million.
He's just assisted another goal for Portugal tonight, and they've just made
under 21s.
Yeah, under 21s. They've made the final, and it is apparently a really good ball through by him. So the talent's there.
He's done that a few times, hasn't he, for them? And I think for me, he could be the successor to João Moutinho. He's got that ability on the ball. He's got really good vision. It wasn't the greatest season, and the highlights were kind of few on the ground, really. I wasn't. It took me a while to be convinced, and the jury was still out for me for a long time on Nelson Semedo. But I think towards the end of the season, I think he started to adapt to the Premier League and prove his worth. So I think I'd like to see more of him. I'd love Adama Traore for everything to click for him to be more consistent. We see flashes of it at times, and I do wonder, obviously, what's going to happen to him now, because he was. I genuinely think that him and Nuno had a real bond and were very close together. But I'd love to see Adama link up with Raul Jimenez again. I think they had a real chemistry, and I think that was unplayable at times. They really have got something special together. So to see that forward line of Traore, Jimenez, and Neto again, I think that could strike fear throughout the Premier League again.
What about Fabio Silva? Tim, Fabio Silva got the same goals and assists as Diogo Jota last season in 11 starts.
Well, I think Fabio Silva again. I mean, nobody expected, although he went straight into the first team squad rather than the under 23s. I don't think anybody expected him to have had the game time that he has, and it's interesting that if you put his minutes against kind of any breakthrough 18-year-old, it does stand a very good comparison. I think he's in the top 10 or 12 in the Premier League of all time. Personally, I think that's only a good thing. And while he did have his challenges to start with, I think by the end of the season, again, we saw a big improvement on him. And I thought some of the criticism of him was very unfair. This is an 18-year-old coming to a new culture, new country, couldn't speak the language to start with, coming to the toughest league, if not the best league, the toughest league, the most competitive league in the world, and with all the kind of the physicality of it as well. And I think he learned a hell of a lot, and I think could become a real asset for Wolves going forwards. So I think he needs more time.
That's quite interesting. I mean, we might as well talk about right now, whilst we're on the subject of the players, because Amy and Manny, I will want you to give me your thoughts and players of the season as well. But Tim, in terms of outgoings, Traore's been linked, hasn't he, with Chelsea recently. We've had João Moutinho linked with a move back to Porto. Neves has been here for 4 years. I mean, I'm still surprised we've still got Neves. He gets linked every year. Rui Patricio linked with Roma, and these links don't seem to be going away. I mean, obviously with the manager going, and there was a big attachment, and it looks like they are bringing in another Portuguese manager, which might have an impact. But who do you expect that will go? I mean, if you were to say now, who do you expect will go?
It's difficult to say, but I do understand the speculation, and I also think, and I think it's important for fans to understand it, as well, because when a manager goes who had signed these players, and he clearly had a very close relationship with them, it's understandable that those players are going to be linked elsewhere. They, for all that supporters would love the Portuguese players to have this kind of lifelong affinity with Wolverhampton. With all due respect, they probably hadn't heard of Wolverhampton, before landing up here. So let's not be blinded by any loyalties here. They're probably as uncertain as the supporters are. I do understand, someone like Jose Mourinho at Roma I can see the attraction of liking Patricio, in goal. For me, Patricio is a world-class goalkeeper, and I'd love him to stay at Wolves. Whether like any of them, whether they stay or go, that there are perennial players that are linked with moves away from Wolves, and I think the two most obvious ones are Traore and Neves, because Traore, I think, will always have that, because he's just he's a unique player. The fastest footballer in the world, and such an exciting player. He's always going to be attractive to other clubs, because he's got something that if when he plays right, he is unplayable. There's just no denying it. So, and managers will always fancy their chances of turning Traore into a world-class player. So I totally understand that. Neves been linked away. I think for me, the one I'd always watch with Neves is Liverpool, because his Jurgen Klopp's number 2 was Neves' his youth team coach at Porto. So there's a long-term association there. And now that they've lost Wijnaldum, and they play with a 3, but as someone of Wolves' persuasion, of course, I'd hate Neves to go, but if he was going to go anywhere, I could understand why he'd be linked with Liverpool. But I think we've got to watch. There's a massive tournament about to start, and I think there's 4 Wolves players going as in the Portugal squad, and it wouldn't surprise me if they use that platform to kind of put themselves on. Use it, in the best possible way, and someone like Neves, for me, could grab the tournament by the scruff of the neck, and he's got the ability, and I think the composure and the maturity now to be a realistic target for some top clubs, and I say that as somebody who would love him to stop at Wolves and achieve his potential at Wolves.
If he does so, he would probably end up putting the price up a bit. So that would be the one bonus.
Yeah, Amy, the thing is, Dave, you know what? I was just going to say to Tim, just to finish that off, have teams in La Liga or Spain, even Italy or even here, have they got the finances now? Are they prepared to put?
Good point.
Because at the end of the day, we've talked about being creative. Adama Traore today said, this was in his Spanish press conference, said that they link your name with great teams. It's a joy for me, but I've not spoken with my agent. The most important thing is to recover. When the Euros ends, we will see what is real and what is not. So, whatever Neves might want to move, Traore want, but if somebody hasn't got 50 or 60 million, if Liverpool don't want to spend 50 or 60 million on Neves, then he's still our player till 2024. So there could be not as much movement as we probably think, hopefully.
Yeah,
I think it's a very good point, Manny. I think COVID has changed the world and the football transfer market, possibly for a good few years, whereby certain clubs might not have the budget that they previously did, and that might work in Wolves' favour, because I don't think the 2 players that we've just been talking about, Traore and Neves, I honestly don't think they'd be pushing for a move from Wolves. No. Especially Neves. Neves to me always has seemed very settled. But of course, we're talking about somebody. We're talking about a club that had these players under Nuno. Now, Bruno Lage, assuming he gets the job and is appointed shortly, he might have his own ideas. He might. There could well be targets that he wants to bring in and to finance those deals. he might need to sell those players, and those two certainly at the moment would appear to be the most marketable.
Don't forget Rafa Mir as well. He's attracting quite a lot of bids, interest. Although, like, he's still a Wolves player, that could raise some revenue there as well. Amy, you were going to come in with a comment there. Just come in with what you were going to say.
It was kind of on to the same point as Tim's, is that I think that there's with COVID and clubs' finances, it's going to be a different transfer window than people are probably expecting. I think there was quite a slow transfer window last summer because obviously the short season, but I think this year, clubs haven't had gate attendances. There were, a lot struggling for finances in some instances. So I think it's probably going to be a lot slower transfer window than people might expecting. So there might be the need to sell players. We just don't know, do you? And I think on to the point of them being Nuno's players, that if he were to go somewhere else quite quickly, I think that's where we could see some people like Neves and Traore potentially following him. But it's all speculation. I don't like to read into transfer rumours that much because I think until it's happened, Jimenez has been going since he arrived at the club. So until they're actually on their bike, I'm like, just don't read into it. Just, it's all just rumours, isn't it? So we'll just see what happens. It's going to be an interesting one for sure.
Fosun have surprised us many times, haven't they? With their last minute reveals where, we just didn't have a clue. Well, look at the manager going. Nobody had a clue about that, so they do keep their. I'm sure Tim said before how, the contacts at the club that maybe people like Tim used to have under this ownership is maybe a little bit harder to, get the inside knowledge.
A couple of other things to just ask you about, Tim. Ait-Nouri, I've been really impressed with him in his second stint since Johnny Otto got injured. Your thoughts on keeping him? Because I think he's still very young and he's shown enough for me. Morgan Gibbs-White, I think a lot of us were writing him off, with various different things. I think the performances that he's put in the last 3 or 4 games has really changed my opinion, and probably a lot of people's opinion. If they're playing in that position in the hole, it seems to me that he's still got that ability that we've already sought. And obviously he's a homegrown lad. He's growing up a bit. And of course, there's a lot of speculation. We thought that John Ruddy was going out the door. I think Nuno played him as a thank you in that last but one game. But it looks as if he's closing in on potentially signing a new deal now. Is that because we think Rui Patricio might be going? And if he does, would he be number 1 keeper or still as a backup? I know there's 3 there, but I'll just throw them at you.
Okay, I'll take them in order then. So Ait-Nouri looked to me to, when he came in and, made a scoring debut against Crystal Palace, looked a very accomplished player and has continued to look very accomplished going forwards. I do think he's still learning the game. I think he's a work in progress, particularly with the defensive side of his game. He has come up short several times, and he's cost the odd goal. I think with his errors, his positioning. So he's somebody. I think in terms of a permanent move, you've got to take that into account. For me, ultimately, that the whole player, he's a little bit similar to Ruben Vinagre in that very good going forwards, but suspect defensively. Now he has improved. I do think he's got really good quality, probably more quality on the ball actually than Vinagre. And I think Vinagre. I think Nuno sort of ran out of patience with Vinagre in the end. I think Ait-Nouri, I think he sees the potential. He certainly saw the potential to make it a permanent deal. But of course, that call now is rests with the new head coach. And he'll decide whether Ait-Nouri is good. For me, I don't know. The jury's still out. There are other players I've got firmer opinions as to whether they should go than Ait-Nouri. I'm also giving people second chances. So I'd probably say, let's sign him on a permanent deal. Bearing in mind he's only 2021, and you are buying potential, and he is his quality on the ball, but with a caveat, to work extremely hard on the defensive side of his game, especially if Wolves is a player 4, because he'll be more exposed in a 4 than he won't have a Willy Bolly behind him. So yeah, I'd probably say sign him. Was Gibbs White? Sorry, was Gibbs White the last one you said?
Yeah, Gibbs White and John Ruddy.
Sorry, yeah, Ruddy. With Ruddy, I mean, I don't know that Patricio is definitely going to go, so I can't say that Ruddy is about to sign a new deal because Patricio is going to go. Yes, I did expect Ruddy to have gone this summer, so I am surprised that he's got the carrot of this new deal. But if he signs, I personally would be delighted. I think he's a brilliant goalkeeper, very different goalkeeper to Patricio. But I miss those low trajectory exit goal kicks that he produced in the Championship that set so many attacks in motion. And what a professional to have. He's had to be patient. So I'd welcome him staying. But also I'd love Patricio to be staying as well. Gibbs White for me, it's maybe not always fair to make comparisons, but I am going to make one because he's in the public arena and he came through the same England under-17 World Cup winning team as this guy. But when you look at how Phil Foden has kicked on, I personally don't think we've seen anywhere near the same consistency or ability from Gibbs White to have kicked on at the same.
Do you think
level.
That's application more than anything else and distractions off the field?
It could be. It could be. I don't deny it's very. It must be very difficult for young lads, which suddenly, thrown. Lucrative contracts and to kind of not be distracted and to keep your eye on the ball. I do know he's got a very strong family unit behind him. He's very well looked after. I did think he should have gone on loan possibly sooner. I do think the Swansea experience has helped him. I was perhaps a little bit surprised at times by the amount of patience that Nuno showed him, but Nuno was unequivocal. Nuno's by and large very loyal to players, and I think was very loyal, always stuck by Morgan Gibbs White. And I think by the end, I think Gibbs White was repaying that, with some sort of form. I always thought Gibbs White has got a lot of potential, but I don't think we always saw it. And I thought part of the reason for that was he. Perhaps, and maybe even the management and the coaching team didn't know his best position, and that still might be the case. I think we saw flickers of it as a kind of number 10, but I've seen him play, quite a few positions now for Wolves, from right back, defensive midfield, central midfield, attacking midfield. He's played wide right of a 3 up front as well. So I think he's shown he can be versatile, but I think sooner or later he does need to kind of set, like we've seen Foden coming in off wide right onto his left foot. I think Gibbs White needs to kind of nail down a position for himself. I think physically he's really come on, although he needs to be stronger on the ball. But I think he needs to, like a lot of young players, he needs to start making the right decisions. So what I mean by that is, he sometimes delays making a pass or a cross when he should deliver earlier. I think he holds the play up sometimes, trying to maybe be a bit fancy and trying to beat a man when a pass would be, would suffice. But again, these are all lessons that young players, they learn or they don't learn. And if they don't learn, they fall by the wayside. I'm not saying that's the case with Gibbs White, but I'd like to. I love seeing homegrown players coming through the ranks, and I'd love him to make it. But it does need to. He really, at the age he is now, he needs to have a good, consistent season, I think.
I think you make a good point. I think, and we'll come on to the new manager, and that might give him another fresh start as well. Just want to move on quickly now, because there's a couple of people. Nag has basically on Twitter said, with Wolves women securing promotion, what next for them? And there's also Jess Deakin, who's an aspiring young female footballer who wants to get into the Wolves team, women's team. Thoughts on the Wolves women promotion? Manny, I'll come on to you first on this one, because you're going tomorrow night to actually see the Wolves women, and you're taking some celebrationary samosas ahead of samosas.
Yeah, it was really nice of Dan to invite. I think a lot of the fans who did go to a lot of the women's matches in the last couple of years, they amazingly sent out some invites to all those fans, and I think there'll be about 400 of us altogether who, I ain't going to be charged or anything, so I'm really privileged and honoured to be invited to go and see an unbelievable. We just talked about Nuno. Dan McNamara is another really impressive bloke. Honestly, he talks really well. His team talks. The inspiration he gives to his team just run through brick walls. They basically ran away with the league 2 seasons in a row.
And had a great run this year in the FA Cup.
And then unfortunately, because it's a junior league in the pyramid still, it just gets cast aside with COVID. But thankfully, they've applied and they've been promoted, and they're going to the next level, because we've seen in their FA Cup run, they beat many of the teams even in the next level. So a brilliant occasion, and he's asked for some samosas, so we're cooking. I shouldn't be doing this podcast. I'm supposed to be out there cooking.
You've got a big team behind you.
No, I'll get told off when I get back there. So, brilliant achievement. And it was interesting to listen to Jeff Shee on his second or third Ask Wolves talk about Wolves women. And it is pretty, let's be honest, it's pretty low on the agenda, as you look at Chelsea or Man City, who've made their teams and bought professional players from other countries in to suddenly exalt themselves in the women's game. I don't think Wolves are going to be doing that, but they did say that they wanted equal opportunities from grassroots for boys and girls to join in with all their soccer schools and all their coaching and all their underage groups. So that's good news, and hopefully that will produce not just players for Wolves women, but just women, getting women to play football more, and girls to play football more and join other teams. And one day, hopefully, we will have quite a professional setup right at the top. But I don't think in the list of agenda on Jeff's list of things to do, unfortunately, it's not right up there. It didn't seem from what he was talking about. So I think Wolves women are a little bit behind the times in that, but it'll be really interesting to see how they go next season in a higher league, and fantastic achievement.
Well, they have got good infrastructure, and Amy, as a female Wolves fan, you absolutely know your stuff, and you follow Wolves home and away, long time. And your dad, obviously, if you ever hear a dad Wilf, he can tell you some stories. I tell you. From your perspective as well, how do you see the support that Wolves have been giving the Wolves women team, and the fact that they're very much investing, as Jeff said on his thing about giving young girls the same opportunities as young lads in the academy?
Yeah, I think it's really important, and I think it's the way that, quite rightfully, the sport is going. I think I never played football myself. However, my sister played football too. She was quite good, but I don't think when she was obviously at the age of, when you at grassroots, when you're young, it was ever a recognised thing really for girls to be playing football. I think it was just, she just played, she just mucked in with the lads, but she was always the only girl in the team. It was never, there was girls teams for her to play in, which is obviously always going to hinder someone at that level reaching their full potential, because you're not surrounded by, there's never going to be mixed teams, because it's, human body. It's never fair for there to be mixed teams, is there, at that type of level. So I think, the focus, especially within the city. I went to an all-girls school in Wolverhampton, so I know that now football there would be a lot more on the agenda, I think, and I think the club's probably got a lot to do with that. So I think it's a really positive step forward. I think the fact that the way that it's spoken about within sport now, like I was listening to a podcast earlier and they referred to Gareth Southgate as the England men's coach, whereas previously it had been the England coach, which I think all of these things are just really helping to elevate the women's game. And I think it's really good that, right, it might be on the agenda, low down on the agenda, but if we were talking about this even 5 years ago, it wouldn't even be on the agenda. So I think the fact that it's starting to get there is just a really positive step forward. And what Dan McNamara has done with the team and the girls, and they've obviously been hit hard by COVID because of the league that they are in, and that they've had that recognition of getting promoted and, you know, quite rightly deserved. It's really positive for the women's game, but also Wolves Women as a football club. So I think it's really exciting, and hopefully, you know, I still can't kick a football myself, but obviously
I did invite her to the football game which me and Manny played in. But you did play bubble football on your Hindu, but that's where you
and that's where I injured myself. So that might sum up my sum up my football prowess. I just left it to my sister when I was younger. But no, it's really positive to see, and I think the way that Wolves Women are spoken about on like the Wolves Instagram and all of that media, it just helps, doesn't it? It helps the games live.
Have you got a little bit of insight into the Wolves Women? I don't know if you've had much involvement or talking or following it yourself, but it'd be interesting to hear a little bit on your insight on that, if there is any.
I wouldn't say I wholly, you know, happy to admit I haven't got an insight on the. I've watched their progress, and I'm delighted, you know, to see the recent news that they've been promoted to the third tier at long last. You know, belatedly. I know that Dan McNamara is, you know, very well respected by not just supporters, but I think, you know, in the women's game and by the players as well. You know, the fact that they've had so many positive results against higher placed teams in the FA Cup, I think augurs well. I think it's going to be great that they're playing Albion women next season.
Local derby to go and see.
Local derby is going to be good. But I think there's a bigger picture here, and I think it's like you know, other issues in society. You have to give things time to kind of ease their way into people's consciousness, and things like this, just us talking about it, everything helps. You know, things take time. Things take years. I covered a women's international. I remember at Telford more than, I think it's 1999, so more than 20 years ago, you know, we've come a long way in that time. For example, it would have been unheard of for England women internationals or former, you know, high-profile women players to have been summarised as pundits, commentators on high-profile shows like Match of the Day. Now, having met people like Alex Scott and Karen Carney, I can tell you that they are, in my opinion, at least as articulate, intelligent, have the knowledge of the game as some of our top men. And you know, I've seen instances where they've actually knocked spots off them, and I won't embarrass the men concerned. But having been in press boxes, I've seen the research that women do, and they just know, they just get it. You know, they know it and they can describe it. And maybe because they're women, they feel that they've had to work harder to get those opportunities. But they've proved themselves as equal, if not better, than their male counterparts. And I've seen it because I've seen it with my own eyes. I remember being at Villa Park earlier this season, and there was a group of TV or radio summarisers behind me, one of which was a well-known woman international with a well-known male former player who you would all know. And it was very much the woman pundit former player who was taking the lead and suggesting to the producer, you might want to have a look at this tackle, this move, how it evolved. And basically, she to me, it appeared as if she was very much taking the lead. And I've also I've spoken to Karen Carney at length. I've interviewed her before. She really knows her stuff, and I do think that getting women into the highest profile access points in the game, such as our top TV shows, getting them all under one roof at St George's, for example, so putting them on a par with the men as much as possible can only help. And seeing the Women's Premier League on after Match of the Day on a Saturday night, for example, these are all little building blocks, but all things that will help in the long run to really push the women's, because girls who want to play football, they want to aspire to be someone, not necessarily the next Wayne Rooney or anything. They want to be.
Got a girl on here like Jess Deakin, who just put that comment on there. I've read it out. She's exactly one of those girls that you refer to right there, Tim.
Well, I think we all aspire to be the best that we can, and we all want to see. We all have heroes who we want to emulate. Now, I'm not a girl or a woman, so I can only guess at this, but I can only assume that top women footballers, girls, start playing the same as we did, kicking the ball around the street or garden or park or whatever, and they've got women who they probably didn't have them because they didn't have women footballer role models, because women weren't given the platform and the profile that they have now. I really hope now that girls growing up kicking a ball around can actually aspire to be an Alex Scott or a Karen Carney, and not just because of their ability behind the microphone, but their ability with the football.
And you know what, as well, we should have more women in the VAR room as well, because they'll probably get more decisions right and a lot quicker too. On top, got to be honest.
Yeah. I was amazed to hear the other week that I honestly thought we were past this stage, but that a woman refereed a game for the first time. It was in League Two.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And I assumed that had happened long before.
Yeah.
No, it's hopefully it's changing, and I think just speaking as grown up as a female fan, not to dwell on it a lot, but you always get questioned as to why you're a football fan, and I think that for me is something that I've grown up with. And you say even at work they're like, "Oh, Amy really likes football," and people question you on it almost, and you always have to kind of prove. I've been going to Wolves matches since I was 4 years old, so. That to me is just, as a fan, needs to change. So in terms of the game and playing, that definitely needs to change. But hopefully, it's good that people like Alex Scott are just getting, because she's presenting Football Focus, I think, from next year, isn't she? So I think it's just really positive step changes, and she knows the stuff as well. So you can't argue.
Absolutely, one of the reasons she's probably one of the best pundits out there. She's absolutely brilliant. I think she's exceptional.
And one of the reasons as well, Tim, why we're fortunate enough to persuade Amy to make many appearances on the channel and be the co-host, because it is really good to get a female voice that knows her stuff properly. As she says, she's been supporting Wolves home and away all her life, runs through her veins, to be able to get that female voice and opinion on there as well. I think it's really good that we've managed to touch on the Wolves women, and I say from everyone on the podcast here and on the channel, and I know from everyone that's watching or listening, we do say absolutely brilliant, well overdue. They've been brilliant the last 2 seasons. Congratulations on the promotion, and may they go from strength to strength. Now we need to move on now to look into the future. And that is the next head coach. It appears that it is going to be Bruno Lage or Lagu or Lager. Well, whatever the pronunciation.
I mean, it's probably going to be Lager, isn't it, considering the Wolverhampton accent? So,
Tim, do you think that's pretty much 99% done deal? And if so, when do you expect him to be announced? Will it be with the backroom team? And what sort of football can we see? From what I understand, I think me and Manny have talked about this as well. he's quite attacking and likes the 4-4-2.
Yeah, well, to take your questions in order, I do expect Bruno Lage to be announced as the next Wolves head coach. I don't know when. I would imagine in the next few days. You don't go to pursue a work permit for somebody without there being a real intent to appoint him. I do think there's things to be sorted out with his backroom staff, and that will all have to fall into place. But these things do tend to happen. So I'm confident that Wolves will get their man and his staff. I know Nuno had a sizable backroom staff, and they're all in the process of leaving the club. I think it will be, and indeed for any Wolves fans, I wish there'd been a lot of people who would have looked him up already. He has got a reputation for having an attacking style of football. He does like 4-4-2. He won 50 out of 74 games, 68% win ratio in charge of Benfica. He's got a pedigree, having led them to a title. Benfica, one of the three biggest clubs in Portugal. You've still got to win those. Like Nuno, he had a bit of an inauspicious ending to his 18 months in charge of Benfica. But I would say that you could, if you picked any candidate, you would find some flaws with them somewhere. What I would say is that Wolves fans have got to be patient. They've got to give him a chance. Unlike, I think it's probably a unique situation in that, I'm not sure Wolves fans, they've probably always not wanted to get rid of a manager, but they've been happy to. There's been a reason why Wolves have lost managers in the past, and it's not because they've gone on to better things in virtually all cases. With Nuno, I think he had the support of all the Wolves fans and or the vast majority of them, and very few wanted him to leave. So I think that will create a pressure for his successor in that he's going to have to hit the ground running probably, and it might mean that fans are less patient. But I would, my message, not that they should listen to me, but I think fans should be patient, because he's got a lot of work to do. He's got to impose a style of play, along with the management of players in, players out, deciding who he wants to keep, who he wants to bring in. He hasn't managed in the Premier League before. He does know the English game, having been number 2 at Sheffield Wednesday, which I think will stand him in good stead. So it's a big learning curve for him. But let's give him a chance, and wish him all the best, and let's see what he can do. He will be backed, I'm sure. Fosun have backed all the managers spectacularly, in my opinion. With the funds, and I'm sure Bruno will be as well.
And that's go on, Manny. I'm going to come to you.
I was just adding. Not very rarely do you have a really good, likable manager be replaced, and then you get a successful one straight away. So I agree, it's a huge challenge for him. Sometimes you do go through one or two people before you find the right balance again. So it's a very uncertain period. But if you look at his record, his last 48 games just in the league, he won 38 and only lost 5. His last 10 games, he only lost 4 of them. And he scored an incredible 133 goals in 48 games. For a Wolves fan, that's like pretty mouth-watering because we were so abject going forward and scoring goals. But the question for me is, players in, we've just talked about Vitinha, Aitner, or Gibbs-White. At the end of the day, it all depends on this guy. He's going to come. He's got the hot seat. Does he fancy those players, or has he got some of his old Benfica players or other people it's been very heavily rumoured that his brother, Luis Nascimento, will be joining him as the assistant manager tonight. Yeah, which is apparently Bruno's second name is Nascimento as well. They just known him as Larger, apparently. But just to
mix things up a little bit.
mix things up. Yeah, so but we, like Tim says, we've got to back him. We've got to give it. There's lots of exciting bits to him. The Sheffield Wednesday one can be negative. People think, oh, he's been in the Championship. Is he good enough? I think that's a positive thing that he's been in England. You know, it's not a bad level Championship. Nuno was there.
It's an elite league, isn't it?
Championship's a tough league.
It's a tough league, but he's got a grounding into the English way of living and being here. That's a big thing for any foreign manager. So he's got that grounding. It's really important, I think. But it will be who he's allowed to bring in, what thoughts he has. Will our players fit in with his style? Remember, Nuno predominantly played his own way with 5 or a 3 at the back and tried to change it. Never really worked. Did he have the right players to do that? This guy clearly plays a 4-4-2 or a 4-2-1, whatever, 4 at the back. So it'll be really interesting, uncertain, but we've got to get behind him. We've got to give him the funds. We've got to give him the tools, and I hope it's not we're in the bottom 8, in October, and then we press the panic button, because you can just get into a spiral then of changing managers, new backroom staff, players getting unsettled again, and suddenly you can get relegated. So we've got to give him time, and we've got to really back him.
Do you know what, as well? I think when he does come in, the likes of Traore and Neto and all the attacking pedants and stuff like that, they might think, well, this guy's going to play to my strengths. Wolves have been still linked with the likes of Polina, Tim, and also Valencia apparently expected Goncalo Guedes. He's been linked. We've also obviously been mentioned Tammy Abrams, we've mentioned Benfica apparently have opened talk with Wolves over a potential deal for Venegra, which could see Carlos Vinicius head tomorrow in a swap deal. I mean, have you got any sort of insights or any little rumours from your contacts about any of these players?
Well, I think it'll all become clear, when the new man's appointed. Some of it will be rumours. Some of it, you have to remember that certain agents will be pushing players because it's in their interest. Maybe things haven't worked out at certain clubs, and they're pushing them for moves. And knowing that Wolves, have got so many foreign players and are so willing to recruit foreign players, I think will mean that they will always be linked. It's a sensible link for these players, but also, Bruno will, he will know the Benfica setup. He'll know the Benfica squad from when he was head coach there very well. So to me, it wouldn't. Again, it's a sensible. It wouldn't surprise me to see players linked from there. That would make sense. And I think he might have to wheel and deal a little bit in the transfer market. I think funds will be there, but I think he's got to, we might have to see movement out to get some movement in. I don't know this for certain, but just regarding his appointment or the date of his appointment, Portugal, I believe, has gone into the amber. Is it now?
That's right. Yeah, from Tuesday.
So if he's appointed after June the 8th, so middle of next week, he'll have to quarantine for 10 days. But now that sounds, why would you want to do that? But whether he actually needs to be in England at this point, I don't know. So I just thought I'd throw that in there. So I don't know how important that is. I.e., Wolves wouldn't want to appoint him to then quarantine for 10 days. But does he need to be in England at the moment or from next week? I'm not sure he does anyway. So Yeah.
They'll probably be able to communicate with him in terms of ideas and all the different things and what he needs and stuff. But training won't start until obviously July. So, whether or not he has to come in sort of like mid-June and then do his quarantine period, depending on what's happening. I mean, that'll be interesting to see. There's one question here from Sandhurst Wolves. It says, for Tim, this is on Twitter. Is it more Mendes signings, or will the Wolves scouts have more say this summer over who we will buy?
Well, I think that George Mendes has proved over the last 4 years just how important he is to Wolves. Both in terms of managerial and managerial appointments and player signings. So while he's not on the staff, he has got a bulging contacts book. Arguably one with some of the best and high profile players in the world. So I think Wolves would be foolish to ignore that. And that's why we will continue to see Portuguese players especially, but foreign players largely linked with Wolves and indeed signing for Wolves. And if it brings results like largely the last 4 years, I've certainly got no problem with that at all.
No, that's cool. And we're we're into kind of the last 10 minutes now. So let's just look ahead. We'll go to you first, then Manny, then you to finish, Tim. Where do we want to be strengthening this season? And if Amy, what positions? And would you be happy with Cody playing in the back four, or do you think he could move a little bit in front of the back four? What's your thoughts?
I think it's quite clear. I think we've played Dendoncker, Saiz and Cody all naturally were midfield players when they signed for the club and converted into back three players. And really, Willy Bowley and Max Kilman are probably the only two out and out centre halves who've got in a 4-4-2 type situation. I think Cody can still play there, but he'll probably need a very high quality centre half next to him. So it's quite interesting for Connor, because we just talked about how important Nuno was on the field. Connor Cody is really important. The unity and the togetherness of the playing squad. He's just a natural leader, and you can't look past that. I mean, look at England. He hasn't really put a foot wrong every time he's represented England. Gareth Southgate, I'm sure, is probably like a big weight off his shoulder in terms of dressing room management, having somebody like him, in and around the camp. So he could really be vital to us. Whether he fits in with Bruno's plans is another thing. So I think we need to strengthen the centre of midfield, whether that's Vitinha and somebody else to replace Moutinho, who's, even if he does stay, we saw quite a bits of evidence of, quite a heavy-leggedness and maybe running out of steam in some games and not being able to get around the pitch. And then for me up front as well, Raul is still an unknown. We hope he comes back. We hope he is strong and fit. But if there's a ball being flashed, 3 feet off the floor across him, and he's got to, dive for a header, and the centre half's boots there, mentally that's a big thing for somebody who's gone through the injuries he has. So I still think we need to because William Jose has come in, and really hasn't really, he sort of just filled a hole, but didn't really produce too much for us. So I would expect a centre midfield, centre half, and a centre forward, the spine of the team. Obviously, depending on who we sell, Adama Traore, if he goes, then you'd expect some sort of wide player to come in, probably not for the same fee as we probably pay or receive for Adama. And again, Patricio, I like Ruddy, but I still see him as a backup, and I still think if Patricio did go, we'd be in the market for another goalkeeper. So there's a big big decisions have been made. If players go, if players stay, it might only be 3 or 4 key central areas for me that we need to strengthen. And getting Johnny back, Raul back, Neto back, Podence fit again are going to be like new signings for us as well.
Brilliant. Some really good points there, Manny. And Amy, over to you. From your perspective, what are you looking for?
I think pretty similar, really. I think it feels, not to dwell on Nuno leaving, but I think you feel a bit differently. You think like things could change probably a lot more than potentially they would have if Nuno had stayed. I think we were all quite clear where Nuno wanted to strengthen the squad and it was his squad, but you feel like there could be a bit more movement with a new manager coming in, and potentially, you don't know what the situation is in. If they want to buy players, then probably going to have to sell players like we've touched on already. So I think, yeah, definitely defence is something. I think to Manny's point, you'd feel a bit more comfortable if there's out and out kind of defenders that were part of that line alongside Willy Bolly, and potentially Max Kilman if he stays. I think Vitinha is a must stay for me within that centre mid role. I think from what I've seen, on to Tim's point earlier, I was really impressed with Vitinha. It's a shame that he didn't get more game time. I think some of the movement on the ball that he did was just fantastic. And then, going forward, the stats speak for themselves in terms of the lack of goals. So there needs to be some strength in there. So basically every area of the pitch pretty much needs a little bit of thought and a little bit of attention. But what do I know, eh? But it's, I didn't think we'd be in the position of doing this end of season podcast and be talking of Nuno going, etc. So you need to but I'm trying to put that to one side and just think that this is a new chapter and you've got to try and get excited about it, put the emotions behind and just look forward into hopefully what will be a good season. I think it's going to be, I don't think we're going to set the world on fire, if I'm honest with you. I think it's going to be a bit of a settling, uncertain season, hopefully not a relegation battle, but I don't think, I would be surprised if we finished any higher than 10th. That's my early prediction without knowing anything that's going to happen. So that's my blindsided prediction. So you can quote me on that this time next year.
We will do, don't worry.
But if we win the league, then I'm not going to say no.
Exactly. Tim, same straight at you, mate. You'll give us your thoughts. I know we do not know where we are. We're uncertain times at the moment. We're just about to enter the Euros and everything like that. And we'll finish off with everyone's last minute predictions on the Euros. But for you, where do you think Wolves will strengthen? And obviously your thoughts on Connor if he does go to a back four, because don't forget we haven't mentioned Bolly as well so far tonight.
Well, I wish I could be, but I don't think I'll be as brave as Amy was in predictions. Are such a dangerous thing, aren't they? But I agree with both Amy and Manny. Hit the nail on the head. I just remember that Brighton game. Wolves tried to defend corner after corner with defenders. Okay, they didn't have Bolly.
No height.
Brighton had a series of players between 6'3" and 6'7". If you look at Dan Burn, and Wolves were trying to defend with like 5'10" players, and and to me, they're just crying out for a commanding centre half. As Manny said, Leander Dendoncker, Connor Cody, Roman Saiz are all career midfielders or started as midfielders, and they've been asked to play centre half. Done a fantastic job on the whole, but they're not the kind of defenders who are going to win the ball in the air as regularly, say, as Willy Bolly. So for me, they desperately need a strong, commanding, tall, powerful centre back who's very strong in the air. So that's a must for me. People talk about the spine of the team. I think 34 Gianmartino's best days are behind him. Whether he stays, we don't know whether he's going to stay anyway. Vitinha, if he comes in permanently, could arguably fill that gap. But yeah, central midfield could well be an area where Wolves need to strengthen. And given the clear lack of goals, then that's something, even with a fit Raul Jimenez, that's got to be addressed. I totally agree with Manny as well in that we don't know, how much mentally it's affected Raul Jimenez. Now, if he's going to be the player that he was before, he's going to have no qualms mentally about going for 50-50 aerial balls with defenders. Now, only he will be able to answer that, and unless he is at that point where he has no qualms about going for those balls, then he won't be the same player, because he was very strong in the air. That was a big part of his game. He was an excellent target man, in my opinion. So there's clearly questions that have been that have got to be answered there. Whether whatever happens with Raul, I think Wolves need more strength up front, need more goals. And I'm sorry, Willian Jose, he's not the answer. Didn't do anywhere near enough for me to have engineered a permanent move to Molineux.
I have to agree with that in terms of, a nice chap. I think he did a job when he came in, holding the ball up, but he just, I'd be very, very surprised even at 3 or 4 million if they take him now. The central defence, as you say, we've pretty much had the same defenders since the Championship. Definitely 100% we need to bring someone in. And if Cody's in to play that position as well, probably someone, I think Manny's mentioned this, with a bit of pace as well, because Cody's not the fastest. But talking about Wolves captain, fantastic, making the squad for the Euros, playing in the friendly against Australia, not Australia.
Australia
in Europe, according to Dave.
Austria last night. When he does play, we don't concede many goals, to be fair. Let's just finish off. Let's go around the table. Starting with you, Manny. How far are England going to go?
Well, I've had the dream. The dream was Harry Kane scores a last-minute goal in the semi-final, but in doing so, pulls his hamstring. So in the final, unfortunately, Connor Cody has to captain in the final and lift the trophy.
Would you imagine?
So there you go. There's my dream. I think, England, I still think they struggle sometimes with their tactics, and we never see. How many times do we see a first 11 England? We very rarely see it in the friendlies. But if you look at the talent again, I remember the golden generation of the late 90s, the Scholes, the Beckham, the Owen, with Shearer, all those players. And you look at it now with Grealish, Foden, Mount, 3 world-class players in that same position, and then you got the Rashfords and Sterlings and Sanchos and Kanes. It's ridiculous the amount of talent England have got, and if they don't achieve something with that, I'll be really disappointed. But favourites for me are France or Portugal, but we've got a chance, man. We've got a chance.
I think Portugal missing both Jota and Neto. Jota's not with them, is he? He's not gone.
No, he's not, but he's still got a lot of class. Ronaldo's old, but in a tournament like that, I'm sure he'll want to.
What's your prediction, Manny? Semi-final, final?
Oh, no, we've won it. I've just told you. Cody's going to lift the Euro trophy and bring it home. And the parade will be in Wolverhampton at West Park.
Instead of Nuno had a dream, it'll be Manny had a dream. Amy, down to you.
I don't know. I don't like... You know me. I know I just predicted less seasons saying that don't, but I don't. I hate predictions like saying they won't finish 10th. That's just because I want to be proven wrong. It's a tough group stage for England. I think
everyone played in the semi-finals. The FA, not the FA, got the World Cup a couple of years ago.
I think Croatia are difficult. Czech Republic are difficult, and Scotland are going to be awful that game. So I don't think we should underestimate Scotland. And I'm part Scottish as well. I've got more Scotland shirts than England shirts.
Last night in Scotland with Holland.
So, let's go semis. But I will be.
We've done that before, Amy. We've done the semis. We're going past that. Come on.
Okay. Well, prove me wrong, England.
Adrian's saying try the reverse psychology, Amy. Tim, for you, your thoughts?
I'd love us to win it. I would dearly love us to win it, and I think we had a very good World Cup, actually getting to the semi-final. So if we could go one stage better and get to the final, then that'd be fantastic. It's about time we did well in the Euros again. I didn't mention Conor Cody before. I do think he's done extremely well for England. He had to wait a long time for his chance. Has not let anybody down at all, and is a captain, is a leader, whether it be for Wolves or for England. In my opinion, he's somebody who's made the very best of himself and his ability, and I think he's a fantastic example to any young footballer, aspiring young player, as to what you should do, how you should live your life, and also shown himself to be a natural leader in whatever company. So I'd love him to go on and have a successful England career like he has with Wolves. I wish I'd had Manny's optimism in terms of where England are going to go. I just think we have a problem in this country in that we always get so enthusiastic about our chances because we only really know as fans about our own players, and we think our players are the best, and that's clearly not always the case. No. I do think we have got at least one world-class player. Harry Kane, for me, is world-class. I think Foden could become world-class, but I think we might have the ace up our sleeve, and Wolves fans won't thank me for saying it, but I love watching Jack Grealish play. Yeah. Grealish has got something that no other.
You take him playing for Wolves. That you hate to play. He's one of those players you hate playing against him, but you take him playing for Wolves.
What a player, and he's got something that no other team seem to have in that. He can carry the ball 60 or 70 yards.
That's a Gascoigne type thing, hasn't he?
Yeah.
He is a tremendous. Every time he played for England, he's been the best player on the pitch every time.
Yeah. And as I don't always agree with Roy Keane, but listening to his analysis of Grealish last night, he always affects games. Like the one criticism of Grealish, going back 2 or 3 years, was that he didn't have an end product. He'd maybe lose the ball, or he'd overplay it, or he'd try to be a bit too fancy. But you look at the effect that he always, every time he gets the ball, he looks forward, he makes something happen, he makes a forward pass, he creates a chance, or he scores a goal. Grealish terrifies defenders, and he always makes things happen. And he's got this stage. He doesn't bother him. So many players fail on the big stage, but I think Jack has got it. Jack can own that stage for me, and he could be the ace of our sleeve.
So how far are we going, Tim?
You're sorry?
How far are we going?
Oh God, I'm useless at predictions. So
you and Amy don't like making them.
Come on, Tim.
I might as well say we'll go to the first stage, and then we'll probably go and win it. You see, so because I am useless at predictions, so I don't know. Let's get to the semis and see where we can go. Well,
that's fair enough. For me, I think I agree with what everyone said. I don't like particularly making predictions, and when it comes to England or Woodthing, I'm always eternally hopeful. I think what happens is if we get out the group, it's who we get in the next round or two. Because in any sort of tournament, I think you've got to have a bit of luck at certain times, and there's bound to be, because it's England, there's probably bound to be a penalty shootout in the last 16. And if we can get past the penalty shootout as we did in the World Cup, then it kind of like maybe you just start to see the route through. So I'm going to say they're going to get to the final. I'm not saying that with much confidence, but I am.
Come on, Dave. Come on.
I do.
I have won 5 World Cups and 4 Euros with England with my predictions in the past.
But we do know that Manny has sent a shipment of samosas over to the England training camp. Make the difference, and we'll be playing some very nice, tidy triangles in midfield.
In midfield, yeah.
So going to the final and hoping that Manny's Manny had a dream for England to win
Outing
the cup.
Dave, please. We need
Connor to live the Euros for us.
Dave, you want thumbs up on this video?
Yeah, that's a like on the.
I've just add to my dream. Jack Grealish will score the winning goal. Connor Cody lifts the trophy, and then Wolves will reveal Jack Grealish as a Wolves player at the start of the season. There you go.
There you go. And
I don't even drink, and I've come up with that prediction.
I was going to say, I think we'd all have thumbs up to that, wouldn't we?
Absolutely brilliant. Now, listen, I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone that's watched the live show. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please smash a like on the video if you enjoyed us doing the live shows. Of course, if you're watching this back afterwards, thank you for as well. And if you're listening to it on your podcast, your Apple Podcast, Spotify, or any good podcast provider, we hope that we've entertained you for the last hour and a half. I just want to say a final thank you to my co-hosts tonight, Amy Hadley. If people want to connect with you on social, how can they find you?
It's Amy Hads on Instagram.
And Manny Kang, how people find you on social?
Mostly on Twitter at Pedal Single, Facebook Manny Singh Kang as it's written. Smosa Saturday on Saturday as well.
I'm a driver.
We've got a busy day.
We will have a busy day, but we always have fun. We're having a team photo as well in the back garden, aren't we?
Yeah, we're using this restriction, so we're all going to get together. There's 11 drivers, 125 deliveries, 4 different counties, and we've coming very close to 30,000 samosas. When we started this, we couldn't have, we never even thought we'd do the first one, to be honest. And it's been unbelievable. The fans have just blown us away, and brilliant. Thank you very much for all your support.
No, it's absolutely. I'm looking forward to that on Saturday, and it's for Dementia UK. This one, isn't it?
Yeah, for Dementia UK. We're in the 90s now for the money raised, £90,000 in the last 3 years, which again, just blows me away how fans have really, really got behind us. Virtually all from fans of the football club.
Thank you. And finally, Tim, I want to say a massive thank you for giving up your time for us tonight. You still do the blog, don't you?
Yeah. Wolves Bite. Posts have become more intermittent over the last year because of work commitments. But I can still be contacted on Twitter at Tim Nash _1.
We're all waiting for the Nash bombs to drop.
We love the Nash bombs. Are you on Instagram, Tim?
I am actually, but I don't use it that often.
You should get on Instagram. It's it's less toxic than Twitter.
Is it? Okay, I'll take your word for it. I know Instagram is probably more for a younger audience. That's probably why I'm not on it. But my daughter's on it. But
Annie's on it. I'm on it. Amy's on it. We're all on it. It's the place to be. Trust me, Tim.
Is it? Is it? I can't. Yeah. I am on it, but I haven't. I can't remember what my name is on there. So my tag is on there. But so there you go. So sorry.
Manny, do you deliver to Kent? Someone's asked me to. You know what? Yeah. We are actually thinking of going and doing a nationwide samosa tour. So watch this space.
And that is the perfect, Manny's Samosa World Tour. COVID predictions are over. The World Tour is coming. You're delivering to everywhere, to the Wolves women, Molyneux. You've delivered to Nuno, Cody, and Neves.
Yeah, believe it or not, the Nuno one was really out the blue because obviously he left and his last match against Man United, he got to go there and give him the send-off, and then just had the message and ended up delivering before he jetted off to Portugal. He had some samosas as well. So, but he didn't donate. I'm waiting for the donation. Come on, Nuno, cough up.
Fantastic. Well, listen, thanks again once to everyone for tuning in for this amazing podcast. Tim, you've been an absolutely sensational guest. Hopefully you'll come on again real soon. We really appreciate you giving us time tonight.
Thanks for the invite. Really appreciate it, and great to hook up with you guys again. It was always a pleasure. Really enjoyed being on the show and catching up with you again.
Fantastic. Cheerio, everyone. Keep the faith.
Right.
Keep believing.
Yes.
Come on,
Back the new
England!
guy.
Come on,
Come on,
England.
England. Always Wolves.
Always Wolves.
Always Wolves. See you guys.